Hi, and welcome to Vetted. I'm your host, Jen Wagman, and today's guest is someone I've had the privilege of knowing and working with for years, retired U.S. Army Captain Jeff Cambre. He's also someone who's logged more air miles falling than most of us do flying commercial. We're talking 7,350 jumps, everyone. No, you did not mishear me. He willingly jumped out of a flying airplane in the sky 7,350 times. Jeff spent 17 years on active duty from 1990 to 1998 and 2004 to 2012, starting with the 82nd Airborne, eventually earning a coveted spot with the Army's elite parachute team, the Golden Knights, where he racked up all those jumps as both a competitor and a demonstrator. He medically retired as a captain in 2012 after sustaining combat-related injuries. That's worth clarifying when someone's jumped out of an airplane 7,350 times. But Jeff's most demanding mission began after service in a tragic incident involving a spinal cord stimulator and an MRI, the result of a facility's failure to follow protocol, which led to permanent spinal cord damage. The road to accountability with the VA was long, and the physical toll was even greater. In fact, sadly, it's not over. As of the first week of May 2025, Jeff is still in the midst of fighting a VA appeal for complete benefits he first filed in 2019. To be clear, and not to misrepresent VA's care for Jeff, because he has been provided medical care and partial compensation, and he has not been left destitute. However, he has had to fight nearly every step of the way for nearly every single thing he has received due to inaccurate medical opinions involving medical professionals opining inaccurately on complex spinal cord injuries that they're simply not qualified or trained to evaluate. All of this is due to an unbelievably overburdened benefit system that is just so backlogged, it has taken years and years and years to whittle through his claims and appeals, whether correctly adjudicated or not, and he's been left having to fight over effective dates, degrees of his disability for compensation purposes, in other words, how bad off he really is, how much home care, aid and attendance he requires, or assistance with activities of daily living and functioning he really needs. Today, Jeff lives with C2 tetraplegia, meaning he has paralysis affecting all four limbs, but he's what's called a functioning quadriplegic, able to use limited upper body movement for daily tasks. He also manages serious conditions like neurogenic bowel and bladder dysfunction, which means his body no longer controls those systems independently, and another related condition that causes dangerously unstable blood pressure, sometimes without warning. In 2019, Jeff and his wife Gloria moved from the Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, North Carolina area to Orlando, Florida for specialized VA spinal cord care. Jeff and Gloria, who he calls his rock, have been married for over 15 years. And let's just say she's earned that title more than once. After Jeff's accident, she left her career as an architect and an equity partnership to become his full-time caregiver. Today, Jeff spends his time restoring classic cars. He's doing it his way, at his pace, and in his own words, just figuring it out. Jeff and I met back in 2018, and I can honestly say this conversation is one I've been looking forward to sharing with all of you. Jeff's story isn't just about what he's lost, it's about what he's still building. Engines, relationships, resilience, and of course, one hell of a legacy. And that legacy, in part, is this. While Jeff's injury might be unique, his VA benefit story is not. That brings us to something bigger. Right now, we're seeing sweeping, top-level leadership cuts across VA. Decisions that appear to be based more on internal political calculus and tenure than perhaps what may actually be in the best interest of veterans. And while these moves are framed as efficiency reforms, they're missing the mark entirely. The real crisis isn't at the top, it's in the trenches of the benefit system. A backlog that spans years and years. a culture that prioritizes quantity of decisions over the quality and accuracy of the outcomes. Outsourced exams by contractors with little or no specialized qualifications. Reports that fail to meet even the basic legal standards of competence for rating purposes. Meanwhile, veterans like Jeff are forced to navigate a broken system that has repeatedly failed to ask the right questions, let alone answer them. So, as leadership changes sweep through the VA, we have to ask, are the right people being let go? Or is the real dysfunction, the one veterans live with every day, being ignored? Let's get into it. Hi, Jeff.
Hi, Jen. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing good. Doing good.
Great. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining me tonight. This is a long time in coming for many different reasons. Explain to the audience a little bit more about who you are and who you are to me personally. We've been client and attorney for many, many years, but you've become more than that to me. You are a friend to me as well. I think you are a friend to the community, the veteran committee, a friend to the veteran community, and that isn't something that you have to be. I feel like it is a role that you choose. People choose to take paths in life, and when things happen, when tragedy happens, you can either stay where you are. You're certainly entitled to do that, but you make everything positive. I started representing him when I was with Paralyzed Veterans of America, and we developed a very synergistic relationship because Jeff is very involved. He takes ownership of his information, his health, his the pursuit of the things that he needs, as does his wife Gloria, who I just met for the first time. She's an amazing person. One of the things that first took me or struck me about you and the relationship you have with her is that she still is a successful architect, and she had a career when you lived in North Carolina, where she worked with a firm. Was she a partner there? Was that?
No, she worked with a firm, but in Colombia, she actually had her own architectural company. And when I say Colombia, it's South America.
When Jeff's accident happened, and he can tell you more about that, she quit that and she stopped to become his caretaker. And a lot has ensued over the years that she has followed. She is taking care of him. They've moved to Florida, and she became his caregiver. Changes to the caregiver program within the VA actually, within the last couple of years, made it so that their income level or the benefit actually dropped. It reduced, so that they did not receive as much as they were receiving, and that affected them negatively, as it did a lot of veterans and their caregivers when that happened. Over the course, the pendency of his fight for his benefits, uh, the appeal has been pending and just went before a judge yesterday. And we had the hearing before her, and Jeff gave his story. As he knows, as I've told him many times before, I am not a proponent of hearings before the Board of Veterans Appeals. Generally speaking, they are not what everybody typically thinks. This is not a court of law. The Board of Veterans Appeals, it's not your day in court. You don't go and not everybody has to have one. They should be reserved for very distinguished and special circumstances when there is something that needs to be conveyed to the veterans law judge that cannot be done on paper, or could be done better in person. And in Jeff's case, this was one of those. So that being said, Jeff was phenomenal, and he gave one of the most compelling pieces of testimony that I, in my 20 plus years before the board, have ever heard. And I was really happy to hear that he would come talk to everyone today about what he's been through, because I think it's really important that others understand other veterans' experiences as well. Jeff is as you said, C2 tetraplegic.
Right.
And that means he has limited use of his upper extremities. And when I say limited, it's really functionality. He doesn't have function in his upper. He can move them, but he can't necessarily pick up a quarter from the floor. So he needs
Nothing
assistance.
finite.
He needs assistance with daily activities, brushing hair, using a spoon, feeding, bathing, those kinds of things. So he is a tetraplegic when it comes to that. And then we also have loss of use of bowel and bladder that we had to describe. And it's not a comfortable subject. It is not something that you want to go in and talk about, but they're not getting it right. VA hasn't been getting it right, and it's made life very difficult. And I shouldn't say all of VA isn't getting right. It's medical examiners and the comparison of evidence, and that's why we're in the appeals process. And I
Probably
you get it.
specifically outside independent examiners
Right.
that are paid by the VA but are not VA doctors, probably more PAs or nurse practitioners instead of
Correct.
the actual doctor.
Tell me a little bit about
Principals.
what you did. Yeah, your service. Tell me a little bit about that.
I'm a former Army captain out of the 82nd Airborne. I was medically retired in 2012. I was also a former Army Parachute Team Golden Knight member for approximately 10 years, where I did Halo School. I also managed to rack up about 7,500 jumps, some good, some bad, some indifferent, but they were always fun, which led to a lot of injuries, both service-wise and jumping, which I suffer from today, and I have suffered from for the past 15 years or more.
How many surgeries have you had? You said as a result of not just your spinal cord injury, but you've had independent of that, your service connected for other things as a result.
I've had 10 shoulder surgeries. I've had 2 back surgeries. I've had 4 knee surgeries. I've had a testicular torsion surgery where one of my jewels got caught in a parachute harness.
Oh my!
And that did some damage. And then I've had 4 back surgeries.
And all of this is service connected,
All of this is
independent
service connected.
of the spinal cord injury, and that's important, right? You know, you have the one thing that we talk about that's related to the appeal, but all of these things for the listeners are independently service connected as a result of your jumping.
Correct. Well, jumping, and I was teaching a bunch of people how to mountain climb, and then the rock crumbled, and I actually fell and broke my back. So there's a lot of military service, and there's a lot of playing hard in there as well.
You enjoyed your time in the service very much.
Very much. I'd probably still be there today if I wouldn't retire.
What happened when it came to your actual spinal cord injury?
This is a mixed bag of tricks. I was contracting in Iraq, and I tore my shoulder up, which subsequently I wound up having 5 surgeries on one shoulder, and then 5 surgeries on the other. I got medevac back to the States. I went to have an MRI done in the process of working it up. And I also had a nerve stimulator implant in there. And then when I was in the MRI machine, it was heated up and subsequently caused the spinal cord injury, which also compounded the fact that I had 2 neck fractures previously while jumping. So it was kind of insult to injury. And that really kind of put the final nail in the coffin.
You walked in to the MRI facility. You did not.
Couldn't walk out.
Okay. And what year did that happen?
2017.
And what happened after that then? What was the immediate course of action?
It took 3 or 4 years for the VA to accept my spinal cord injury. And as something being service connected to my actual back injuries and neck injuries to begin with. So that took a while for that to happen.
How
Um,
did you file initially? What did you do you remember the exact claim? This was, this was a little bit before you and I met. You
um,
filed for service connection for
I went to my primary care doctor and started the process with the documentation,
was this
making
within VA?
to get it
Your
within the VA. Yes,
Okay. This was
um,
your VA primary care doctor.
correct.
Okay.
Um, so then we started the process and started filing everything. And for one reason or another, it was kicked back with insufficient evidence or this is not part of your service connection. Um, so then that
And
was
this is in North Carolina?
in North Carolina,
And where in North Carolina were you?
Fort Bragg at the time. It took a while and then they finally accepted it. And at that point, we had moved down here to Florida. And when I first met my new primary care doctor at Lake Nona VA hospital in Orlando, she automatically set me up with a spinal cord center in Tampa. And I was a patient there for a month. They did the evaluations. That's when I actually started really receiving care for my spinal cord injury. And all the time prior to that, my wife and I were just Googling on how to transfer or why am I having accidents or
There was no spinal cord center, and
not at Fort Bragg.
right. And so one of the things that you and I talked about was that you really lacked a lot of even I know you had PVA representation. I know that you had assistance uh from that organization, which I know is helpful, but it's not on site right there. It's not that doesn't provide everything for you, especially when you're rural. And that's what North Carolina is. It's not you would have to drive. You don't have that ability to get everywhere to that kind of it's not that easy. You described that everything that you needed was more or less something you had to Google. You had to figure out how to care for your wife was your caregiver, as we talked about. She quit her job to do that, to take that role on, and you weren't being provided all of the information by the VA medical center there or the doctors there to do so. And it was scary, frustrating, lonely. And then you said it took 2 or 3 years for your service connection claim to ultimately be granted. First of all, did you have to go through the board in order to get that, or was it granted through the regional office? How far did you have to go?
It took going up to Winston-Salem and actually meeting the congressman for North Carolina to um to get somebody I could talk to. And then it was dealing with my primary care doctor in at Fort Bragg, who got set up an evaluation, and then once the evaluation was done, then it was determined, yes, I have these problems.
So you got an opinion where it was really concrete that this is
Absolutely.
something that but were there VA exams or contract exams like we're talking about in the interim prior to the one that you got from your primary care physician at the medical center? Had the regional office or the board or anybody in between ordered one for you that said, no, this is not service connected?
At that time, I was primarily dealing with the civilian doctors through the workers' comp um,
Right.
because the VA wasn't taking it on, so I had to get workers' comp to actually provide my medical services to where all the diagnoses were there. It was just putting it in front of the VA and actually sitting in front of a doctor and having them evaluate it and look at it.
But prior to when you filed the claim and prior to the VA primary care doctor giving you a positive opinion, was there an exam ordered that said one way or the other that this is service connected or not service connected? It was
It
denied at
was
one point.
I'll give you this, but I don't think this is the problem. So
Okay.
then it was, I'll give you that, and then I don't think this is the problem. And then it was, okay, I see where this is going now, and yes, we'll accept it as a claim.
Gotcha. Okay. And so then you're ultimately granted service connection and you are assigned a rating. Where are you assigned? How does that work?
Well, since I retired, I've always been 100%. I just don't know if I did the math and all the percentages, I'm probably about 500% like everybody else that's out there.
Yeah.
It's just everybody has a story, and each one are different, but it all takes you to the same place.
Well, I disagree with you on that. There are many people out there who probably have several 100% if you add it all up, but they're not all created equally. And does it all take you all to the same place? Some yes, some no. And I think part of why I want some of these stories to be shared, and particularly yours, is because there are levels. And there are levels of frustration. There are levels of work that need to be done in order to get where you're going. I think that it's important for people who work at big VA, that's my term for the federal government, state VA, North Carolina, and other states, because I think that there's a lot of responsibility that's placed on big VA when they shouldn't be the only ones who are caring for our veterans. States should also have programming and more resources that are being poured into the veterans that reside in their states. You happen to have a service officer through PVA who did the filing of your claims. You met me through the appeals office at Paralyzed Veterans of America, but you don't have that throughout the country when it comes to state veteran service officers, county veteran service officers. And the reason they don't have that is because their legislatures within the state do not budget the money for the veterans administrations within the states. And that needs to change. The attitude needs to change. But in order for us to take care of them the way they need to be taken care of, to take care of you, is to spread out the responsibility. And that includes among service organizations, nonprofits. We need to be, as a country, as citizens, we need to be better consumers about who we're donating our money to. There are 45,000 veterans service organizations in this country. That's a lot.
Wow.
Okay. So not everyone is created equal. And we need to be making sure as citizens who are donating to them that we know who we're donating to. And that's a simple matter of, not just throwing, whether it's $20, $30, $5, know who you're giving to, because some of them are spending the money the right way. Some of them are making money off of these things, are veterans. And trust me, from one who struggles for donations, who doesn't make money, when you're doing it for the right reasons and you understand, it's very frustrating to watch when there are more nefarious things going on elsewhere. We don't throw each other under the bus either. The ones who work together to eliminate duplicative work and are trying to make it so that we share the resources that we do have, and so that we make sure that veterans and transitioning service members know what else is out there. There needs to be a better way to do things. So yeah, not everything is created equal.
Well, I
But
like to say that the VA is like a supply sergeant. I have 10. If I give you one, then I've only got 9 left. So if I approve this spinal cord injury here, I've got to make 1 or 2 or 9 more decisions. So I have to make sure I have some on hand, but then I can give out so many.
is that how you feel?
Of course.
Oh, and I've been your lawyer for how long? I've failed.
I always said if I could write a book about my experience with the VA, there would be 3 chapters: the good, the bad, and the cussing sailor.
Love it. I love it. Do I get to be a part of the last one no matter what?
Of course.
Okay.
I just think that I'm going to put on my positive hat here. I'm going to say I know the VA is trying, and they're completely overwhelmed, especially after a 20-year war, to where there's so many people coming back with a various amount of injuries, both physical and mental. It's very hard to navigate, where do they put their focus? Everybody is an individual who needs their stuff to be taken and considered on an individual basis, not
100%.
not the old supply sergeant to where I've got 10. If I give you one, I've only got 9 left. So from being an individual and having your stuff looked at and then carefully looked at, not just scanned over to where, and they're big on keywords. Is there a keyword here that says this? Is there a keyword here that says that? Is there a keyword here that does this? Instead of taking all the information, instead of looking at a keyword and then dissecting it down to the root problem. Okay, well, yes, this person is obviously 100%. They are paralyzed. They're tetraplegic, and so on and so on. And they take all that information to heart, but they've only probably got a limited amount of time to review this and then move on to the next one. Review this and move on to the next one. I think they're understaffed and they're not doing a good job at working through the problem.
Okay. I am even more thrilled that I asked you to be on. I'm going to take you through this. And I can't believe that I've been your attorney for as long as I have been and that you feel this way.
And it's not just me.
Oh, I know. And this is why. This is the perfect example of why you are on, and I'm going to continue to invite as many people that I can with real life examples because you need to be heard. Your story is unique, and to your point, people need to be treated like individuals. Their cases need to be reviewed, and they are reviewed, and you need to feel like you are treated individually because Jeff, I know you are. Your case is incredibly important. The problem is because there are so many extraneous things going on and bigger problems that I like to think that I will be addressing through my work at GenVets, through my work on this podcast, bringing people like you on, bringing other people from big VA, from state VAs, from service organizations. We need to be discussing these things because I'm your attorney and friend for how long? And I didn't know you felt this way. You need to understand that when people are filing claims, when veterans are coming out and filing claims, you said that everybody probably has 500%. Everybody thinks, no, the problem is not everybody has 5%. Not everybody's entitled to 500%. Too many people think they are. Too many people think that everybody has 500% or should have 500%. Everybody's listening to sort of the banter about, well, my buddy got 100%, this buddy got 100%. I should be getting it too. Oh, this organization said, I can get you 100%. This group of people will write it up this way so that you're guaranteed to get this, and they'll do it in record time if you pay them this much money.
Absolutely.
That's not the way it works. The system was not set up that way. Not everybody is entitled to a disability rating of 100%. The system is about eligibility. And I am not trying to rain on anybody's parade. I am not trying to be a spokesperson for VA. I am trying to explain to the most important people in my life and my heart, you, veterans, your brothers, your sisters, the way that the law is written, the way that the regulations are written. And trust me when I tell you that even the people that my friends, the people that are in my family who work for VA, who work for the states, they're veterans too. And they hate the fact that I would sit here and defend the way that the law is written. And if you want to change it, if you want to make it so that I've used this example before, people hate the fact that erectile dysfunction is something that can be linked back to service for the average Joe, and we're paying them $100 a month, for something that every 40 or 50-year-old male, gets. So why should that be something that is standard when we have people like you with true disabilities? And I understand that that is a disability. It can be linked to things that actually are spinal cord related and all of that. I'm not poo-pooing that. I'm not taking that away. But you understand what I'm saying when the law is written that if you have a condition that can be related back to your time in service, It doesn't have to be something that's combat related. It doesn't have to be something that happened as a result of an injury that happened to you while you were serving. It has to be something that can be related back to your service, your time in service, with a medical nexus letter. If that can happen, if you are currently diagnosed with something and you have medical evidence that links it back, you can be considered. Too many people are throwing everything in the kitchen sink at the VA, hoping that 5 of them will stick and they'll equal up to 100% so that they can be like everybody else. That's not what the system is set up for.
And that's why it's flooding the system.
And that's why your appeal isn't getting heard. The appeal system is broken as a result of that, and you're not getting what you need in different areas. It doesn't mean you're not being heard, you're not being listened to individually. You feel that way. And that's a failure on the system as well.
One of the things that I, from the outside looking in is if you have a person with a spinal cord injury, who's evaluating that? What knowledge do they have? Again, are they looking for a keyword that identifies something? Or are they taking all of the information and dissecting it and pulling out, okay, the actual diagnosis? Are they doctors? Or are they just someone that just randomly had this file put on their desk?
100%. You hit the nail on the head again. We could have individual discussions on each of these points that could last an hour each, but who is evaluating the medical evidence? And this is another very big debate. You, in your case, had a medical opinion and an addendum that they asked for clarification because the first opinion wasn't clear enough. I argue the addendum that was provided also wasn't clear enough. It was provided by a physician's assistant, not a neurologist, not a spinal cord specialist. And that's what you should be having. At this point in your appeal that's been going on for as long as it has, when you get to this level and we're looking at whether or not this is related, I don't want to hear from a physician's assistant who's had a little bit of training at a VA training about VA exams as to whether or not this is secondary to or could be possibly related to. Your case should have been sent to a neurologist, a spinal cord expert, not a physician's assistant, especially when you, Jeff, have the evidence from your spinal cord injury VA physician who has been treating you, who's already said that it is. You have positive evidence. They're not supposed to be developing evidence against your claim. And that's a whole nother argument. It's why this to me is something that shouldn't be difficult to prove and establish when we send in what we're going to. But it's the way that you feel as a veteran going through this process. It's the mentality you have, the genuine thoughts that having, especially with me as your attorney, that I haven't even believed or understood that you to have, that you believe that I can't grant as the board member. I have to be careful about how I grant yours because I have 9 other and I only have this many that I can grant. That is just not true. They can grant as many as they want. There is no limit. There's no limit on the amount that they can grant. There's no pot of money that is being taken away from them. Now, that could become a problem.
It's emotional.
Right.
It changes the dynamic in the house.
Yes.
I'm not a husband to my wife. I'm not a father to our son because the roles changed. My wife has now become my caregiver instead of my spouse in a lot of areas. The things I did with our son and now the things I can't do just really, it takes a toll on you.
During the hearing, it was emotional for you. It was emotional for me. It was emotional for the judge. The amount of respect I have for you is immeasurable. The amount of sadness that I have that this is the way that you and I know others believe that's the system to be. I can't. It's why I want to continue this because it shouldn't be this way. This is misinformation. And it's not, I'm not suggesting you're spraying. I want you to understand that this will be corrected. It shouldn't have to take this long. And one of the other reasons I wanted you specifically to come on and tell your story so that it can be heard is the difference in treatment and the way your case went from the time you left North Carolina to the time you came to Florida. It was like a light switch went on for you. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Again, we moved down here and I had to transfer my VA doctor to a wonderful little doctor here in Lake Nona, and she is just spot on. And she connected me with the spinal cord clinic in the Tampa VA, and in a matter of days, I was there as a patient, getting evaluated, getting tested, getting all the necessary tips and tricks, I guess, on how to cope, how to do transfers correctly, how to maneuver around things in my wheelchair correctly. There's just so many things that I could have stayed longer, but I wanted to get home. They had this thing where they wanted me there for 3 or 4 months, and maybe I would have gained a lot more things out of that. I'll never know now. What I did take away from, we use on a daily basis. And for that, I'm grateful.
You will continue to learn and you will continue to grow from this. There's a difference in you from when you left North Carolina to when you got to Florida. And I didn't think you needed a change. I told you, I think you've always been a positive person. You've always been a patient person. And I've learned so much from you. I think that
I'm
that
quietly screaming inside.
but that's the beauty of you, is you're quietly screaming inside, and yet you've got so much to say. I mean, we're out of time, but I there's more to say here, and I would love to hear what the audience has to say. I would love to hear feedback from this because I know there are other stories that are out there, and there's going to be a follow up to what happens with your story, and I'd like to have you back on to talk
Wonderful.
more. And you're so great that you say that. And maybe Gloria will come on too. Um, you know,
Well,
they-
she'll get us both crying. Let me get this out without crying. Um, she's my bedrock. She's my ride or die. Without her, I may or may not be here. Coming here was good for us. The VA in North Carolina, I felt really beaten down. Um, like, why do I have to keep proving this? Why do I have to keep proving this? It made me feel less as a person, a soldier, a husband, a father, because I wasn't being heard and nobody was listening to my cries except my wife in the middle of the night. And that's hard.
she's amazing. We're all lucky to have someone like her to set the example. I'll tell you what, but we're also lucky to have you. And I hope you know that. I really appreciate you coming on. I really do. And, let's cross our fingers. I'm going to write a kick-ass brief here for you, and we'll see where it goes. But I have good feelings for you. I really do.
All right. Remember 3 chapters: the good, the
Reach,
bad, and the cussing sailor.
you got it. I get
Yeah.
I get the third one for sure. All right. Take care, Jeff. Say hi to Gloria for me, okay?
I will. Thanks, Jen.
All right. Bye.